Hello, my name is Father Gregory Pine, and this is Pints with Aquinas. All right, so we're like 2 years into the pandemic at this point, and it seems like the thing to do, or at least a lot of sovereign nations have decided that the thing to do is to pass vaccine mandates. So we had the situation in the United States, the one law concerning large employers, the other law concerning medical facilities which accept federal funding. I live in Switzerland presently, and I'm surrounded by countries who are all making their own judgments about this matter. So Austria just passed a universal vaccine mandate for all those over the age of 18. And then Germany's talking about doing something similar, and France made it such that you have to have a vaccine pass to get into a lot of indoor venues, so you can't test anymore. And then Italy has been passing their own in its own way. Okay, so when this happens, it makes many people obviously nervous and perhaps angry and sad. It makes many people a variety of things. But the question arises how you address this, how you confront this. I think many of us have made the determination that such mandates are unjust. So how do you confront that injustice? In order to address vaccine mandates and the particular prudence that goes into these types of determinations, I thought that we could dedicate this video to some background considerations about justice and law, and then we'll have a future video concerning vaccine mandates in particular. So the question here is like, when can I break the law? Or why might I break the law? Or what needs to be in place in order for me to, quote unquote, break the law? So that is what we're going to do. And here we go. All right, so in answer to the question, let's start first with a definition of law. St. Thomas Aquinas says that a law is an ordinance of reason given by one with care of the community for the common good and promulgated. All right, so it's an ordinance of reason. Just to say it's not just an ordinance of will. It's not like this is so because I want it. At a certain level, a law is a clarification or an application of the natural law. So you have the natural law, which is in us by virtue of the fact that we're human beings, so we have these inclinations, we recognize these goods, we incline to them, like life is awesome, right? And then human laws for the purpose of extending that natural law, applying that natural law, clarifying that natural law. So like the natural law says, don't steal, and then the human law says, if you do steal, you're going to be punished in this particular way. So it's an ordinance of reason. Second, it's given by one who has care of the community. So you can't just, go off half-cocked, making laws all over the place. It has to be in a political arrangement, which itself is reasonable. And you have to have the care of the community. You need to be charged with the making of laws. You can think about the United States system. You got those who make the laws, those who judge the laws, those who execute the laws. So you yourself have to be a legislator by virtue of office or appointment or whatever. All right. It's for the common good. All right. So you don't make laws which just benefit you. That's like the definition of tyranny. So that would be a bad political arrangement. So laws are for the common good. And the common good is, it's described in a variety of ways, but a basic understanding of the common good is that it's an ordering among all of the relationships of those who make up the polity, who make up the civil body. And then it's promulgated. Okay, so it can't be a private thing. It can't just be like, I made a law. All right? You need to make a law so that people can know it, so that people can follow it, because you can't expect people to follow a law which you haven't made known. All right. Now, when it comes to breaking the law, quote unquote, this might unfold in a variety of ways, and not all of them are alike. So I think it's helpful to sort them out. So first, it might be the case that a determination is made that a law doesn't apply to a particular person. All right. Example. Let's say that you suffer from very, very acute anemia. All right, so you have no iron in your blood, and it's so acute that it's actually dangerous for your health. And you've tried a variety of supplements, medications, foods to try to get your iron levels up, but almost none of these options seem to do you any good. You're eating alfalfa sprouts, you're eating chunks of iron. All right. The only thing that really works for you is liver and onions, which is disgusting, but at least it keeps you from dying. Now, here we are, it's Lent, it's a Friday, you're not supposed to eat meat, but you obtained what is called a dispensation from the proper authority, like maybe your pastor, the bishop, so that even while the ecclesiastical law binds all those to whom it's addressed, you are dispensed from following that law because you, as a particular person, would be damaged by it, all right? Would be very much damaged by it. So yeah, you do something else on those Fridays as a way by which of commemorating our Lord's Passion, and you just move on in life. All right. Another example of a dispensation, maybe you have a learning disability, all right? And your teacher, this is law in like lowercase sense L, your teacher has a classroom rule that when you take tests, there can be nothing, absolutely nothing on your desk except for the test paper and, your pencil or pen or whatever. But you need additional help. Let's say that you're hearing impaired and you have like a little machine with what do you call those things? Headphones and then a little receiver or something like that. So you can hear the oral directions that are given over the course of this exam, which has a listening component, all right? You're not breaking the law, you just have a dispensation given who you are, given your particular, limitations as a human being. So this would be like a stable arrangement, something that's known, something that the class has acknowledged, something that your family is cognizant of, etc. That's a dispensation. So that would be a reason to break the law, even though, truth be told, the law is shaped to you in a particular way, so you're not really breaking it. Okay. Another instance, and this is called equity. It comes from this cool Greek word called epikeia, all right? And when we're talking about equity, usually we're talking about a situation in which the circumstances make it such that if the legislator had known about your circumstances, he or she would not have intended that the law apply in them. All right, so these are the cool examples that I came up with. Let's say that it's 2 a.m. in rural Nebraska and you live in a town with a single stoplight. Let's also say that there recently rolled into town a crazed serial murderer who, you got signs posted all around the town. This person is easily identifiable to you. Let's say you're coming out of a diner with your friends, again, at 2 a.m, and then you see the serial killer get into a car just across the lot and start following you. And then it becomes a high-speed chase in rural Nebraska. And then, halfway through, you come to a stoplight, the one stoplight in your town at 2 a.m, and there's no one there. It's just corn. But you know that if you stop at the stoplight, the serial killer is going to get out of his vehicle, and then he's going to hunt you down in the prime of your life. So you left, right, left, and then you just blow through that. If the legislator had known the circumstances in which you found yourself at this high-speed chase, he or she would not have intended that the law apply. So this is an example of equity, okay? So in the first case, dispensation, it's the person has a special arrangement. In the second case, equity, it's the circumstances make it such that the law itself doesn't apply. In both of these cases, we're not really talking about breaking the law so much as recognizing instances in which the law fails because the law is intended always or for the most part, right? But given the fact that we live in a material world and there are all kinds of contingencies that may arise, it may not be prudent, it may not be just to follow the law. All right, when we're asking about this particular question, typically we're asking about an unjust law. Now, an unjust law would be a law that undermines this sense that we have set forward at the outset. So it's got to be an ordinance of reason by one who has care, all right, for the common good and promulgated. Usually we're not too worried about the promulgation because people typically get that right. We're usually worried about something that's not reasonable, right, that's usurped, or something that actually undermines the common good or conduces to evil. Okay, so in these instances, let's say that the law demands you to sin. All right, let's say that like a particular law is passed that whenever somebody confesses murder in the context of the sacrament, the priest who hears that confession is bound by law to divulge the person in all pertinent circumstances to the local authorities. Okay, so that's an unjust law. It's not an ordinance of reason, all right? The legislator is not competent to make that judgment, okay? And it's not for the common good. It conduces to evil. So in that case, the priest, if he were to divulge, he would be sinning gravely, right? So that's an excommunicable offense. So in this case, he would have to break the law. He would have to break the law because he's bound by a higher law, to use the words of St. Peter. All right. Now, in most cases, we're typically not being asked to do something that's gravely offensive. Typically, we're being asked to suffer an injustice, okay? So like in the case of Austria, the vaccine mandate that was just passed for all those over the age of 18, the understanding is that if you don't get vaccinated, you'll be fined to the tune of like 4,000 pounds. That's in Great Britain, 4,000 euro a year, which is a lot of money, right? A lot of money. And it's yet to be seen, right, whether the state will actually seek people out and collect this money and how it will subsequently be apportioned and stuff like that. But at the outset, that's a terrible thing. So if you feel, in conscience that you don't want to participate in this thing, that vaccination should be a voluntary choice, that you're not on board for whatever reasons, and we'll talk about those in a subsequent video, right? Then the question arises, what should you do, okay? And I think here you can see what other sovereign nations have done. So you can use legitimate means of redress, right? So sue or file a suit of some sort, protests, peaceful manifestations, conversations among those in your circle to try to raise awareness and see what can be done further. Prayer, right? So there are lots of things that you can do to confront this law. You're not just simply to say, all right, this is a law, therefore I must follow it in every way, shape, or form at all times and, and in every circumstance. You can recognize the fact that it's unjust and do what lies within your power to try to repeal it. And certainly there was some success with that in the United States. And then, a final consideration as we wind down to the end is whether or not you have to fight like tooth and nail against every injustice that comes your way. And this is just going to be kind of like a teaser of what is to come. But I think here that as Christians, we look to the example of our Lord Jesus Christ, not just because he's a great guy with great skills, but because he's God incarnate and what he does saves. And our Lord chose not to open his mouth. He went like a sheep to the slaughter, even though he was unjustly condemned, even though, the accusations lodged against him were confabulations. And when asked about them, he says, you'll see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming in glory on the clouds, right? So there's this recognition that you will probably suffer unjust laws throughout the course of your life. And then what do you adopt as an interior disposition, as a habit of mind and heart, as you confront them? And ultimately, the bedrock is that we offer our lives in imitation of our Lord Jesus Christ to the Father as a pleasing sacrifice. So that doesn't mean that as Christians, and I said this in an earlier video, it doesn't mean as Christians that we become doormats or victims or constantly look for opportunities just to get, steamrolled or just get trodden over. But rather that there's a recognition that we will only ever be justified or vindicated in the end times, right? We will only ever be justified and vindicated in the resurrection at the end of the age by our Lord who comes on the clouds to vindicate those in his righteousness. So, in sum, on this last point, we talked about dispensation, we talked about epikeia, and now we're talking about the reasons for which one might confront or push back against an unjust law. Certainly, if it demands of you to sin, no dice, non-starter, can happen. If it doesn't demand of you of sin, but rather to suffer, right, then you can and are encouraged to use legitimate means to confront that injustice, but you don't necessarily have to spend your life seeking always and everywhere to repeal unjust laws, especially if, they only negatively affect you and you're not responsible for others or for the vulnerable who might stand to suffer worse as a result of them. So yeah, my thoughts on this are still kind of coming together, but I think that we'll revisit it in a future video so as to tease out more and more of the details. Okay, this is Pints with Aquinas. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel, push the bell, get updates. Love every one of them. And then if you haven't yet, please do check out Godsplaining, which is a podcast of the Dominican Friars of the province of St. Joseph, to which I contribute. A cool thing on the Godsplaining horizon is that we have 3 retreats this summer, to which you are all cordially invited. So there's one for all comers, one for young adults, and then there's a men's wilderness retreat. So check those out at godsplaining.org. And yeah, my prayers are for you. Please pray for me, and I will catch you next time on Pints with Aquinas.